All right, fabulous. Econ 200, my micro students, go team micro. You guys are doing awesome. You made it through that first exam, and now we're dealing with chapter 5, which is the elasticity chapter. And so we're looking at different types of elasticity to include 4 major types of elasticity. Just to recap, what you might have seen or you should have seen in my other lectures is there's elasticity of demand, elasticity of supply, price, cross price elasticity, and income elasticity. What we're going to do today, this is a continuation of the elasticity of demand along a linear demand curve. From the previous lecture that you watched using the example with the hamburgers at Disney World, we saw that elasticity of demand actually changes as we go down the demand curve. And that is kind of counterintuitive because if you remember from your graphing days, from your algebra days, that the slope along a demand curve, a linear curve, any straight line, stays constant. So that's a reminder that elasticity is not slope because elasticity changes as you walk your way down that demand curve or go up the demand curve, whatever direction you want to go. Elasticity along a linear demand curve is not constant. So what I want to do with this lecture in particular is relate that demand curve and that set of elasticities along that demand curve as it changed from elastic to unitary to inelastic, relate that model to total revenues. Because one of the goals of a firm is to make as much money as possible. Translation into econ speak, maximize revenues, right? We want to do make as much money. That's their goal. They're private enterprises. They serve their stockholders. They serve their employees. They want to do as well as possible. So they want to choose a price that is going to result in a quantity that combined, that price quantity combination will result in the best revenues possible for the firm. So we need to create a model that shows that so that the firm knows when choosing a price, if they have decision over price. In some cases they don't, they're at the mercy of the market. But in a case where they can choose what price to set, they would look at the total revenues function and say, oh, look, total revenues is high when we charge this price and we can sell this many units, okay? So we're connecting the demand curve to a total revenues curve. And so that's what this lecture is about. It's about stacking 2 graphs. Let me pause for a quick second before I open up the actual handout that accompanies this lecture. There is a separate handout, like with my other personal lectures. You've seen so far that I lecture and I go over a handout at the same time, and it's to your benefit to have that handout open so that you can do it as I talk through it at the same time. There's a lot of learning that can happen that way. I really encourage you to watch my personal lectures, okay? I believe it was apparent on the short answer exams that some of you aren't watching my circular flow model lecture, that you're going, oh, I got this. I don't need to hear her ramble. Me rambling, it's what you would get in a traditional classroom setting. I'd be up in front of the dry erase board, you'd be sitting in your chairs, and we'd be having the same conversation that I'm recording for you now. It's really important. It's an important part of the class. I explain and elaborate and present material in a different way from what you would just get from the internet or the textbook or even the canned lectures that I post from Crash Course, the cutesy little lectures, right? I may not be as sexy or dramatic as those actors, but I've tried in my experience of teaching to give you the nuts and bolts, what most students need, the ways that a lot of students have been successful in navigating intro microeconomics in particular. So what I want to do real quickly before we get started is just to show you, remind you where these lectures can be found, where the handouts can be found, so that you make sure that, especially with this lecture and most of our chapters going ahead, this chapter I meant, not just lecture, but this chapter, because there's several of my lectures in this chapter. But from here on out, when we get to utility next week, cost curves the week after that, perfect comp, monopoly, the way we're going to finish out the quarter, it's going to be really important you watch my lectures and you watch my demonstrations where I problem solve, where I go through how to solve the questions that I like to ask that I think reflect the heart of microeconomics. So let me show you on Canvas real quickly where you can find my personal lectures. Make sure that you're watching them. Find my handouts. Make sure you have those open while you're doing the homework. And then we'll get started with the continuation of the elasticity along a straight line demand curve discussion. So in this lecture, I will be saying, oh yeah, we did this already. So I'm not going to show all the elasticity calculations. You can go back and watch that lecture on your own. Another cool thing about having these lectures videotaped is that you can go back, you can play them over, you can stop them, you can only watch a portion, you can rewind, go back, whatever you need to do. Whereas in a personal class setting, if we were in class together, you couldn't necessarily, one shot's all you get, and you got to write as fast as you can when I'm talking 90 miles an hour like I am right now even. So to your benefit, you online students, that you have these recorded lectures that you can go back. If you didn't understand what I said, if you didn't understand how I went from step 1 to step 2, rewind, listen to me over and over again. Okay, watch the math play out on the screen and then do it yourself longhand. Okay. All right, so that being said, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I'm going to take us to my Canvas shell. I'm going to navigate to the handouts. I'm going to open the handout that's relevant for this lecture, and then we're going to walk through it. Okay. All right, hang on, here we go. So let me share my screen again, over here, share. All right, and so when mine pops up with announcements, and make sure that you always check all of the announcements, right? So I posted about this awesome Zoom yesterday. A couple of us, it was great that a couple of you guys joined me. That was awesome. We got to listen to Mark Mahoney, who is a higher up in the Seattle Mariners organization, and he talked about how undergrads can get involved in pro sports. If you're thinking about a career in sports, and pro sports in particular, he gave a lot of really good tips. So pay attention to those kinds of opportunities as they pop up. Even if you're not graduating, you guys might be intro students, you might be running start students, first, second year students. It's always good to hear the advice. And one piece of advice I do want to let you know that he stressed, and I was like applauding him in the Zoom, make sure, whatever you do, that your resume and your cover letter are picture perfect. Not a single typo, not a single miscapitalization, no slang. You want those things to be formal. You want them to be perfect. He said he gets about 200 cover letters and he immediately maybe throws about 20 or 30 away because there's typos in them. Just one typo will put you in the trash can. You do not want that to happen to you. We take written communications very seriously. So complete sentences, right? Do not make a cover letter like you would send a tweet. Way different. Okay. Anyways, that being said, really useful Zoom message from somebody who does a lot of hiring. It was really nice to hear that that's what I've been telling my students all along. Let me look over your cover letter. Let me look over your resume. Make sure that your cover letter is personal, that it's not just this canned that you send out to all the major league teams. You want to say something personal about how you love the Mariners, right? Kind of idea to personalize that letter a little bit more. But anyways, enough of me preaching. Hopefully you'll hear this enough over your career here at Eastern that you will take it seriously when it comes time to go on the job market, okay? So here's the announcements. To get to my lectures, you scroll along the left side over here oh shoot, I hit grades. Never mind, don't look at those grades. Don't want to show students grades. Over here, you scroll down to modules and you can see my little cursor, my finger is over here on modules. When you click on modules, that's how the material is organized in this class. Notice we are now on module 5. Module 5, consumer theory. Read chapter 5. I have chapter 5 broken down into the various sections of chapter 5 where your free textbook, don't you appreciate me using a free textbook for you, is located. Then there's the PowerPoint lecture that is a summary of those to make sure that you got the highlights. And that's just the highlights. Do not just click on the PowerPoint and think you can get everything important out of that. You'll be missing a lot of important material by not reading the chapters completely. Take your reading quiz. Then these videos, these helpful videos, are ones that I found on the internet by other professors. And so I present them here for you in the hopes that hearing it from someone else will first make you realize that we're all saying the same thing. But second of all, you might click better with one of them. And that's absolutely fine. If you like one of those professors, go click on his YouTube channel and go to his YouTube channel and look at all his other videos. They might make a lot of sense to you. Okay, you like, he's funnier, I don't know, whatever. By all means, that's not cheating on me. I don't feel cheated on at all. I'm here. I wouldn't have given you those links if I didn't think they were helpful. But you need to watch my personal lectures with important handouts. You can see it right here. I have them organized, and there's quite a few. There's quite a few. There's a lot going on in this chapter. So make sure that you really spend the time with these lectures, okay? And go back over them a third time if you're still not getting it. Underneath each lecture is probably a handout that relates. So open the handout, listen to the lecture. Open the handout, listen to the lecture, and so on. Okay, so this is where you will find where I will go over practice problems that are very, very similar to the ones that you're being asked to do in homework. So this is an important area where you should be spending a lot of time weekly, okay, on this class. All right, so that being said, what I want to talk about today, finally, right, we're far enough into this video lecture, let's do demand and total revenue. So I want to do that handout. I'm going to open it up. And here it is. Hopefully, actually, I'm going to stop sharing for 1 second. I'm going to stop sharing the Canvas and make sure that I share the correct file. I'm going to go to my Word document on demand and total revenues. And hopefully you can see this in your screen. Okay, this should look very, very familiar. This is the same exact problem that I did before when we were doing the elasticity between the points and we were using the midpoint formula. Don't just go grab any elasticity formula off the internet. If you happen to get the point formula and you use the wrong formula, you will be wrong. If the question says use the midpoint formula, you will use my midpoint formula. And you should always use my formula anyways, because it's superior. So anyways, so don't just go grab anything, any formula. And I believe the textbook uses the midpoint formula as well. So it's the same one in the textbook, same one in my lectures. So you've had much exposure to it and lots of practice if you've done my other lectures. Okay. Anyways, that being said, now we're going to take the same demand curve, set of prices, set of quantities, and we're going to look at total revenues. And we're going to look at the relationship between demand and total revenues. And so total revenues can be found by the price times the quantity. So how many units did we sell, and then times the price per those units, and that's going to give me how much money we brought in. That'll bring in my total revenues, okay? So you can see that if I just simply expand my table, notice this is the same table from above with the P's and the Q's. All I added was this third column on the right to be total revenues. So now all I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply column 1, price, by column 2, quantity, to get the result, column 3, total revenues. So let's look at the first row here. At $10, I wasn't able to sell any of my hamburgers. Nobody was willing to pay $10 for a Disneyland hamburger. So 10 times 0 obviously is 0. But I noticed when I lowered the price to $8 that 100 people bought my hamburgers. So $8 times 100 hamburgers is going to give me total revenues at the end of the day at $800. Then I played the game again and I said, well, that worked. Let me lower the price $2 more. So I lowered it to 6. And I noticed when I lowered it to 6, my quantity went to 200. So I sold 200 hamburgers and I had a total revenue of $1,200. Well, that worked so well. I'm now from $800, I'm up to $1,200 at the end of the day. That sounds really good. So let's try lowering the price again, down to $4. And I was able to sell 300. My employees were really, really busy crunching out 300 burgers, right? Whew, they were sweating really hard at the end of the day. But at the end of the day, I collected $1,200. I'm like, huh. In that case, you have to stop yourself and ask, is it worth it to lower the price from $6 to $4 to make 100 more burgers if I'm only going to bring in the same amount of money? Huh. might not want to do that, right? It might be better. I'd only have to pay the cost and the materials of making 200 burgers and I could get $1,200. Or I could bust my butt, incur the costs, the buns, the meat, all the ingredients, all that cost of making 100 more burgers to get the same amount of money? Might not want to do that. See how this is important? Okay, this is important to the firm. So you need to know what is the optimal price. If I was smart, because I am, because I have a PhD in economics, I'm charging $6, right? And I'm only selling 200 and I'm bringing home my 1,200 because that's the best I can do. Okay, y'all, if you want to bust your butts for 300 burgers at $4, by all means, go ahead, right? But I'm also a little lazy, so I'd rather only make 200 burgers and still get the same amount. Okay, anyways, just saying. All right. Notice if we were to drop down to $2, we could sell 400 burgers. So lowering the price obviously still increases my quantity, but it doesn't bring in more money because 2 times 400 is 800. So I often hear people say, well, you know, if they lowered the price, they could sell more. Well, yeah, they could, but it may not be a good decision. Okay, so don't say that when you're at the store and go, you know, if they lower their price, they may sell more, because you'll just sound like an idiot who doesn't understand demand and total revenues. So don't do that. You don't want to sound like an idiot. So assume that the price the firm is charging, those guys that are working at the firm, they've been doing it quite a while. They know what their demand curve looks like. They know what their total revenue curve looks like. You just glancing at the price of the item, no, you're not going to do better than them. Okay, anyway, so that's me just being snarky and why you want to be better than that. Okay, and realize that you don't just want to lower your price and sell more. Okay, all right. So I'm selling mine at $6, but y'all can charge whatever price you want. Okay, all right. So now you can see. So let's plot this. Let's put this in a visualization. Make you see it a little bit better. That there is a best price to charge. Okay, all right. So what we're going to do is we're going to plot the demand curve and the total revenues curve. Okay, on stacked graphs. And so when we stack graphs, this is what it looks like. I wish I could, there we go. It cuts it off just a little bit, okay? Let me plot the demand curve first. And this is just a resketching of what you've already seen. I know it's a sketch, but you know what? I didn't want to bore you. You can go back to the previous lecture and the previous handout and see all the detail, right? This actually has A, B, C, D, E on it, remember from our previous lecture? Okay, but I just want to show you the demand curve. So I sketched the 2 intercepts, bam, there's the demand curve. Underneath that, I stacked it so that the horizontal axis, the one that has the Q on it, is the same for the top graph and the bottom graph. Those are identical. They go 0 to 500, and they should kind of line up. The 100s should line up, 200s, 300s, 400s, and 500s should be on top of each other. Isn't that cool? Now the vertical axes are going to be different, okay? Obviously, since we've already done the demand curve in the previous lecture, price is always on the vertical for our demand curves, and it goes 0 to 4, 6, 8, 10. On the total revenues, it goes 0 to 1,200. I did the black intervals. I always set my axes first. So I just went 0, 5, 100, 1,500, and I added the 800 and the 1,200 because those are the numbers I'm going to need. So when I'm plotting the total revenue, I'm plotting quantity is 0, total revenue is 0. Look, quantity 0, total revenue 0. Quantity 100, total revenue 800. So I go over here, 100, go up to 800, and that's the second green dot. Notice that. When you do that, you notice that 200 and 300 both have the same top here at 1,200. And again, if you were a firm, you may want to choose this one because it saves on your materials. I could save the 100 buns for tomorrow and not have to use them because that's an extra cost. I paid for those buns, right? Why would I pay more money in costs to get the same revenues? Not a good idea. You guys getting the idea, right? So no, if this firm is selling burgers for $6, as a parent, you're not going to turn to your little kid in Disney. You know, if they lowered the price to 4, they could sell more. Because the little kid who had my class is going to go, but mom, my instructor
doctor said that by doing that, you may not increase your total revenues at all. So the better option is the $6.
Okay. Anyways, just making fun. Okay. So here we go. So don't say stupid things in stores when you don't know what you're talking about. That's why you guys are going to be so much when you get out of this class. Now you can go talk in stores with some intelligence about this stuff, right? All right. And you can correct your silly friends, okay? And your parents and your grandparents, right? Don't get me started on those old guys. I'm kidding. Anyways, so here we go. So you plot the total revenues and you can see clearly that this firm, if they want to do the best they can, they're pricing somewhere up here, right? They're going to price it where they sell 200 a day. Oh, look at that. Price $6. Okay. So that's the relationship between demand and total revenues. What you're going to look at as well is now going back to our previous lecture about elasticity of demand. You're going to go in here and put in here the elastic region, the inelastic region, the unitary region, and then the elastic region. Go back and watch my video if you don't know what I'm talking about. Super duper uber important, right? Make sure that you can do that. And then if it's elastic here on the top graph, then you know for sure it's elastic here. On this side of the hill, it's elastic. At the top, it's unitary. Oh, look, it's unitary. And then on the right side, the downside here, this is inelastic. And then it's inelastic. So make sure you can do that. You can match these up and you can label them and you will be good to go. And you'll see that the firm may do well in this unitary range, right? Pretty cool why elasticity is important and why knowing your elasticities as a firm. All right, so I'm going to stop here. I'm going to take a drink. I need to go wet my whistle a little bit, go have some Diet Pepsi. I'll come back and I'm going to do another example, very, very similar, but I'm going to give you a demand equation rather than a demand schedule, which is just a table of P's and Q's. I'm going to give you an equation. We're going to do the same thing. I'm going to plot demand and total revenues and do it again so you can see it a second time. So hopefully it'll really start to sink in. All right. Hopefully you've enjoyed my little Friday night snarkiness here. Apologize if I offended anybody's grandpa. All right. But hang on. Come back, watch the other video, rewatch this video if you need to. This will really help with your homework, which is due Sunday. Just a reminder, it's Super Bowl Sunday. I am the biggest sports fan you will ever meet. I challenge anybody to try and think that they're a better sports fan or a bigger sports fan than I am, because I can explain all the rules of curling to you as well. Every Olympic sport there's ever been, I know all the rules, even biathlon. Go ahead, quiz me, okay? So anyways, I will be watching Super Bowl, even though my team is not in it, right? I know some of you sour sports, once your once your Seahawks got out of it, you didn't pay attention anymore. Once my Steelers went down, I was pretty disappointed, but I'm still gonna cheer for my man, Tom Brady. So I won't be available on Sunday to check emails, to respond to questions and things like that. So it's in your best interest to get started early, ask me questions Saturday, or if you can, Sunday morning before the Super Bowl starts, okay? Because I may not turn my computer on at all on Super Bowl Sunday once the pregame starts, which is probably like 3 hours before the actual game. So noonish, I may be unavailable on Sunday, okay? So that little warning, get started. Email me if you have questions, and hopefully you'll get a response. All right, keep kicking butt. You guys are awesome. Go Team Micro.